Hello. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Field Service Live. I'm your host, James Leichter. I'm thrilled that you're here. Appreciate you coming out tonight and joining us. I think we have a great show tonight. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity, specifically how to protect yourself, your company from ransomware, viruses, and all the other bad things that are out there on the internet. So I think it's going to be a great show. Now, if you haven't heard, Field Service Live is all about the field service industry. That's any company that goes out, works on homes, commercial buildings. If you do services of any kind, you're in the field service industry. It's a great industry to be in. It's an industry that I've been in most of my adult life, and we're here to help field service contractors improve their companies. And we do that by getting together every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, and talking about any management issue, anything related to the service industry that might be of help. We have guests on when we can, when we think it's important, when we can get good guests like we have gotten tonight. So that way you don't have to listen to a hack like me. We have somebody on here that actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to internet security. Now, before we introduce our guest, I want to tell you why we should be talking about such a thing. I know personally 8, maybe 10 companies that are the victim of ransomware. They downloaded some kind of virus, their files were held at ransom, and they had to pay out money. In some cases, they paid the ransom. In other cases, they paid IT people to try to resolve the situation themselves. Not a lot of luck doing that. And it was a real nightmare. A couple of companies, it really hurt them badly. So this is something that's going on all over America. We should be taking it seriously. According to the IT experts, the biggest reason why people become victims of ransomware and other viruses and internet security issues is because they don't take it seriously. They just don't take the subject seriously. But if it happened to you, you'd take it seriously. I know you would. So let's get to it. It is estimated that $21 billion was spent just on downtime in 2020 as a result of ransomware. It's also estimated that the average company spends just over $700,000 recovering from ransomware, which is crazy money if you think about it. So it's very important that we avoid being a victim of ransomware. So with all due, without further delay, I should say, let's bring in our guest. His name is Bradley Roth. He is a internet computer expert. I mean, he knows computers really well. We have used him for many different things over the years when we couldn't figure stuff out. Bradley, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, James.
Good. Thank you for coming on. We really appreciate that. So what is the difference between ransomware and malware and viruses? What are those terms? What do they mean?
Each of those terms they refer more to what they're after. A virus is something that's going to disable your system. A piece of malware is typically trying to harvest information from your guys' PCs or from your guys' environment. A piece of ransomware is to lock up your entire company so that you are forced to have to deal with the bad actors.
I see. Okay, so ransomware. I mean, how does that work? How can ransomware be so effective? I mean, how come you can't just unplug your computer from the internet and turn off the ransomware? What is it doing that is so hard to recover from?
Sure. What it ends up doing is it grabs every bit of your files. It crawls across your entire network and it encrypts it. You know, that feeling of security you get when you try to run a credit card over at Amazon.com or some form of e-commerce site, right? Mm-hmm. It shows you that little password or that little lock on the top left-hand side of your screen. It lets you know that your connection is secure. It's encrypted. So the same concept, something that is used for good, such as like encrypting our payments that are made online, can also be used for something that's nefarious.
Okay,
In
so
this case, what they're doing is, oh, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. I think you're going to get to it.
So in this case, what they're doing is they're using a spider bot of sorts to crawl across your entire network, find every single file that you have, and they encrypt it. And then what ends up happening is they are the only ones with the key that is able to unlock it.
Okay. Okay, so like you can encrypt your own files, right? You can get on your computer and you can right click and zip them up and put a password on them. I take it that's kind of what they're doing. They're encrypting your files and they are the only ones that know the password. Is that right?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
All right. So how come it is not easier just to, I don't know, put something on your hard drive that says, don't encrypt my files. Do anything you want to them. Just don't encrypt them.
That's a good question. Well, the money isn't necessarily in the encryption. The money is in the ransom. It's stopping your business from doing enough business or being able to function to where you are on your knees hard enough as a company, and you have to pay the ransom in order to be able to push your product back out the door.
Okay.
So
All right.
even if you put a really nice note in there saying, hey, you welcome to my network, you're welcome to do anything you want with it, just let us keep running. It's not going to work that way.
Yeah, it just seems like it'd be easier.
It'd be nice.
It seems like it'd be easier, or pardon me, it seems like it would be easy for engineers to protect a file with some attribute or some property, like the archive attribute that just says, hey, this file should never be encrypted.
Sure. And that may work for a time. And then the next iteration of ransomware guys will come around with a way of coming up with getting around that.
Yeah, they'll figure that out.
So you're always in this ever evolving. We improve, then they improve, and then we improve, and then they get better, and it's just this constant stair stepping up and down.
All right, so you're telling me that's not a brilliant idea, and I should keep my job.
No, it is.
Keep my day job. I thought I had a great idea, and I was on to something worth billions. Just right click. Don't encrypt me.
No, it's good. Don't encrypt me, please. Change all the wallpapers on all your PCs.
Yeah. So a few years ago, I think it's been about 3 years, maybe 4 years, one of the companies that I am part owner of was a victim of ransomware. But we saw it coming. And what happened is we realized we couldn't open a PDF. We tried to open up a PDF and it wouldn't open. And somebody came to one of us and said, I can't get this PDF open. And then I heard about it and I happened to be there and I walked up and we're all staring at the hard drive trying to open up PDFs. And we realized that the malware was just moving through our computer system. And we saw the PDFs being encrypted right in front of us. And we ran around unplugging computers like crazy. And we watched this thing just encrypt these files. Finally, we just unplugged the computers, got off the internet, plugged them back in. Make a long story short, we stopped a lot of the encryption, but what had happened is we stopped them before they could get to any of our backups. And we had backups at that time, Bradley. We had backups that were connected to our server, right? So we had those hard drive backups connected to the server, and that's a bad idea. And why is that? Why is that a bad idea?
It's a terrible idea. And unfortunately, it's one that we didn't learn until too late. One of my clients that I had to deal with a really nasty crypto lock. They ended up locking 8 of their locations. And the way that they were able to do this is they installed something called Memcached. They basically had it sit on the remote desktop server, waiting for somebody with domain admin access to log in. Once that happens, then it captures that password in clear text and phones it home. At that point, then the bad actors have credentials to be able to hop into what we would consider normally a kind of a DMZ or a neutral zone at that point. So they just were able to pick their time. They looked and they seen, unlike your case, unfortunately for my client, fortunately for you, they knew when the client had their off hours. So they were able to, on a Friday night, around 11 o'clock at night, they were able to start the encryption process, and it finished up Sunday morning.
Oh, boy.
Going across all 8 locations.
That's terrible.
What, and backups, okay, getting back to the backups part. The backup issue was a problem. We had backups. We had actually 2 different locations of backups. And the way that they were able to work around that was by replicating a rather large PST file. They just backed up over and over and over and over again just to override all the backups that they had.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Yeah.
So in our case, we happened to be there, thankfully, because in our industry, it's like we don't have off hours. We're here on the weekends at night and everything else. So we were lucky to be there. But we stopped it before they got to our backups, and we were able to restore everything. And by the end of the day, we were fine. I think we lost a handful of files, but that was it. But the lesson that we learned, Bradley, was we need, in addition to those backups that we had, which are convenient to have, we went with offsite backups. So we started backing up to the cloud. And we ended up doing 2 different accounts. So we went out and signed up with 2 different cloud backup companies, and we back up all day long. So it's just backing up constantly, and only I had and one other person had the login credentials. So I could log into one place, and this person could log into the other, but not vice versa. Well, I knew both, but she could log into hers. I could log into both accounts. And that way I knew that at least one set of backups on the cloud only I could get into.
Yep.
So
that's smart. That's smart.
That was the lesson learned, thankfully. But seriously, we would have been a bad victim if it weren't just for luck being there. Colin, my producer.
Have a lot of different
Yeah,
clients.
I'm listening to this and I think, what does the average business owner do? Do they call the police when this happens? And then I would assume that's really kind of off territory for them. They probably don't even know how to handle it.
Yeah, who do you call, Bradley?
They call me.
I call Bradley. Well, we'll make sure we get your contact information out before the end of this.
Their first call was to, hey, something's going on with our servers. We don't know what's going on. We just can't open stuff. It's not working. Our computers won't start after we reboot them. They call IT in a panic.
Wow.
And at that point, then we get in contact with a threat actor company that goes through this for a living. I mean, I don't want to talk negatively about those guys, but I ended up doing more of the restore work than they did. But you end up hiring, you get a lawyer, you get your insurance of it. If you've got, crypto insurance or ransomware insurance, you get them online, you get a hold of your lawyer, you get everybody, all these different parties. There was like 6-7 different parties that all have to get together, try and work it out.
Wow. I mean, think of the thousands and thousands of dollars involved. My lawyer, just to talk to him is $1,000, and that's, it seems like a 30-minute call. It costs $1,000. Everything's $1,000 with that guy.
Is there a first sign that you've been took? What do people need to look for? Like if they come in and all of a sudden, what's like the first sign?
Yeah.
You want to take that one or me?
Oh, you go ahead. I just make this stuff up as I go along.
Things.
You actually know what you're talking about.
Okay, so there's 2 things. Typically, most ransomware applications will leave a ransom note at every single folder location. So if you've got a root directory, C drive, there'll be a ransom note there. If you got C users, there'll be another ransom note there. If you got C users, your name, there'll be a ransom note there. It's every single layer. There's a ransom note. It'll have directions on how to get a hold of them on the dark web, how to contact them, and how to be able to pay them. If they haven't got to that far yet, that's kind of the last step. The first step that you'll see most likely will be your file names changing to a random subset of numbers and letters.
Oh.
So instead of ending in like .pdf, it'll end in like .347YZ.
Interesting. Now, if you pay your ransom, do they rename your files back?
See, that's the problem. Even if you pay the ransom, the companies that I've worked with, even when they paid the ransom, the bad actors wreck so much of the server infrastructure that you end up having to rebuild the server infrastructure from scratch anyway.
Oh, wow.
You are never whole after a ransomware attack, even after you pay the ransom. That's the dirty little secret.
Oh, man. We haven't had too many dirty little secrets on this show.
What's that?
Colin, we haven't had too many dirty little secrets on this show before, have we?
Well, we're a little new. Just wait.
Yeah.
They'll build up.
All right. Maybe Bradley's got more. Go on.
Oh, boy.
So that...
But no, you think $900,000 would buy you your entire infrastructure back?
Yeah.
You would hope.
You know, that's news to me, Bradley, that they destroy so much of your infrastructure that even if you can decrypt your files, you know, your Word documents, Excel, PDFs, all that stuff, that you've got a wrecked set of operating systems, don't you? Everything's trashed.
Yeah. Well, because they don't discriminate on the files that they encrypt. It's not just your data drive. They also encrypt your operating system. They also encrypt the DLLs that run services. And then those services have dependencies, which also have dependencies. And then you get this non-ending chain of encrypted file mess that you got to decrypt, and then hopefully it all kind of fits together. But it's like having this 1,000 puzzle piece all made together, and then it falls on the floor, and you pick it back up, and it's supposed to be in somewhat the same order. It just doesn't work that way.
So my wife, anyone that knows me knows my wife, Susan, one of the smartest people I've ever known, but she's like the ransomware company's best customer because she used to click on anything. Now, she's way better now, so she's no longer their best customer. But there was a day that my sweet wife would click any link there was, especially if it was a note that you were past due and we were going to send your account to collections. All it had to do was say, you haven't been paying your bills, you better pay this, or we're sending you to collections. And she's like, I pay my bills, and she'd click that link, and all of a sudden she had malware on her computer. Never ransomware, but we fixed a few viruses on her computer in our time. So how are they getting us to fall victim to what they're selling? You know, how do these ransomware viruses get on our computers?
You hit it right there. The easiest, softest target is always going to be the human element. You can harden your network as much as you want. You can have 4 or 5 firewalls deep if you want. You can have multiple redundant backup copies. You can have your network constructed and reconstructed to be the most secure thing possible. But the weakest point is always going to be the human element. It's way easier for me to pick up the phone and impersonate James and say, hey, I own the company. I need access to XYZ. Give me access. I don't know why I don't have access. I need it now. Do it.
Oh, well,
you get the right employee.
That'll never work at my company because nobody ever does what I tell them to do. So it'd be like, I'm too busy for that, and that they'd have to come up with something else.
You know,
He's telling the truth.
well, that's typically what they do, though. They'll go online, they'll research the company, they'll figure out who the C-level executives are, who's CFO, who's CEO, who's whatever, any C-level executive, and then they will go through either through email or over the phone, and they will impersonate that person, and they will try to get somebody that actually has some level of credentials that they're able to pass them on. Like, hey, this is so and so, the CFO. My password isn't working. I need you to change it. You get the wrong IT person on the phone that's just started or doesn't know any better. Their password gets changed, and now the bad actor has the credentials.
Right. I mean, in a big company, I guess they wouldn't know that person's voice.
Exactly.
I understand a common way of doing it is to get you to follow some link. Like in the case of my wife, Susan, they triggered her with the past due thing. You know, you're not paying your bills, you're past due. And that got her emotional. And she wasn't thinking, because she's thinking, I'm proving them wrong. I mean, I pay my bills.
Mm-hmm.
But it's my understanding that that's a lot of how they get their stuff on your computer is they send you fake emails and get you to follow links. How does that work?
That's honestly one of the best ways to do it. It's a shotgun approach. Because, I mean, you can sit out thousands, hundreds of thousands of emails to different companies, and it's a numbers game at that point. Some of them will click it, some of them won't. Your batting average may be down to 2 and 3%, but 2 and 3%, that's you're still got access into 2 or 3% of your 100,000 companies that you tried to gain access to.
Right. I read a story about a company who was they were a victim, but it turned out okay. It was a company in Australia. It was a construction company, and they were rather large, very large. What this company did is they hacked into one of their suppliers. They built a website that looked very much like the supplier, and they sent email to the supplier's customers saying that there's been a problem with security. We need you to change your password on your account immediately. So when the companies would go to the supplier, let's call it XYZ Supply Company, they go to that website, they put in their username and password, hit change. As soon as that happened, they used that information then to log in to the system and place their viruses, their ransomware. And but this particular company recognized the threat immediately. And again, kind of like we did in my company, they immediately started turning off their computers, and they had lots of backups, and they were able to restore everything very quickly. But it's crazy, everybody out there watching this, it's crazy to think that, but it's the spoof's website. A spoof website is another way they get you. You'll go to a website that'll look like a website that you do business with a lot, like a bank or something, and they'll ask you to change your password. And as soon as you put in your username and password, they then go to the real website, log in, and steal your stuff or do whatever they want to do.
I got something to add to that. So what
100%.
they'll do is they'll take a domain name and make it look, they'll give you the example PayPal. We could go by the domain. It's probably it's probably taken now, but make it say PAPA instead of the word L, you put the number 1. They'll do little tricks like that where, it looks like it's coming from this and this kind of email, right? And then you have to go further and look at some little minor detail that you can quickly overlook that they'll get you on.
Yeah.
Yep.
One thing that reminds me, I tell my coworkers to do this all the time, Bradley, and I'm curious what you think. An email comes in. If you think it's a spoof email, hover over the hyperlink and carefully look at the URL. So that's the web address. For those of you not familiar with it, that's the web address, the www or HTTP thing. Hover over that and see what it is. Because remember, anyone can create a subdomain of something. So I can register a domain called xyz5623.com. But I could create a website called Microsoft.123xyzp.com, and you'll think Microsoft, and you might go there to change your password. Now, when you get there, it'll look just like Office 365. It'll say you have to change your password. Once you do, then that's when you're in trouble. Is that right, Bradley?
You're done.
Yeah.
That's 100% correct. That's a lot of effort to go into it, and it's normally designed for high value targets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I mean, you if I was casing a place, you know, if we were physically breaking into buildings, like I guess in the old days they would, if I was casing a place, I would try to find the biggest payoff with the least amount of work. That would be my first target.
Yeah.
So find somebody that has either a bunch of clients, or they themselves are a Fortune 500 company.
I think there's another way I've heard about companies getting ransomware, and that was through USBs. I'm sure you've heard of that. Can you tell us about that and tell us how we can avoid that?
Sure. I actually came across this one. There was a couple of bad actors that loaded just dozens of USB drives, and they ended up throwing them in the parking lot by one of these businesses, or several businesses actually. And you get different people picking them up, and then they'll plug them into their computer to see if they're still good. Problem is, they're plugging them into their work computer, and they have an auto run function on it. Mm-hmm. As soon as you plug it in, you're done.
Yeah, right. So again, for all of you paying attention, people will get these USBs, put viruses on them like ransomware. I mean, otherwise, why bother? Ransomware is the new thing. Put ransomware on these USBs and just leave them laying all over the place. And then someone grabs a USB and says, oh, cool, I found a USB. At a minimum, I got this new USB I can use, but it might have something on it. As soon as you plug it in, it auto runs and it installs that malware very quickly. And it can even destroy itself, so it's not on the USB anymore. And the whole thing can happen quickly, and you're not really sure what happened. You figure you dodged a bullet, and now you have malware. Yep. Probably what it'll do is it'll install a very tiny program that later it hides out and later goes out to the mothership, if you will, to download the big one that kills you.
You just described 0 day right there.
0 day. What is 0 day?
0 day is basically a entry level virus or a malware, piece of malware that will sit, and when it detects that the PC is idle or hasn't been used for X amount of time, it depends on the programmer, it will phone the mothership, as you called it, and it will download viruses. And after it gets X amount of viruses or X amount of malware, then it will execute everything all at once. And then just one day your PC was working just fine. The next day you got 1,500 different viruses and malware and worms and all sorts of things.
I think a lot of us have gotten these emails that I'm going to describe. Have you ever got an email from a friend? You thought it was from a friend. Maybe it was an associate, someone you've done business with, a coach, family member, and it says, follow this link to do something. And then later on, that friend or associate says, hey, my email got hacked. Ignore all the email from me. So what these hackers are doing is they're taking over your email account, getting emails, then sending an email to all your friends. So it might be, hey, it's me, James Leichter, or Bradley. You ought to download this new game or this new utility or whatever it happens to be. Or maybe I'm in jail. I need $1,000. Can you wire me the money? I've had those sent to me as well.
I got a question.
Yeah, what that does is it ends up typically being JavaScript that is executable code. Once you go or you browse to the website, it executes a piece of JavaScript or whatever that will run in the background of your browser, and it will self-inflict.
I see.
Self-infect.
I got you. Colin, what were you going to say?
I'm sitting here thinking, like, this is really scary. Like, I mean, this could actually just rock somebody, like, to the core. And I often sit there, you know, look in my mind and I'm wondering, who are the guys that do this? Are they guys that are typically in another third world country? Or are they guys like Bradley that decided to go on the dark side? Like, who are these guys? Give me the profile.
The bad actors that I've dealt with in the past, the majority of them are for Russia. There are some from Iran and Iraq. There are a good majority from China. And there are ways of blocking that by geo IP with your firewalls and stuff. But yeah, for the most part, that is where a lot of them are.
North Korea.
I'm not saying that there aren't, you know, American-based IT guys that have been on this side of it and see, you know what, I'm sitting here working for $60,000 to $70,000 a year, and my company just paid out almost $1 million. You know, I'm in the wrong line of business, just like with the lawyer.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that somebody, you know, that has been on this side of the fence and sees how easy it is, they aren't tempted themselves to actually do it.
I understand for North Korea, for example, it's a major source of cash is sponsoring ransomware. It's so-called state-sponsored ransomware, and the whole government's behind it, so they're capable of making some pretty sophisticated stuff, and it's a major source of revenue.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some of the ways that companies can avoid ransomware, viruses, things like that. What's the very first thing? If somebody said, Bradley, I'm only going to do one thing, that's it, what would that one thing be?
Hire an IT guy and listen to him. But in all seriousness, though, if you can't get them to hire an expert, the best thing you can do is signing up for a service that will test your employees every quarter by sending out spammy emails. But instead of actually getting a virus or getting malware or something, it'll pop up a web page and it says, hey, you just got signed up for some voluntary user training. And you get a list, you as an owner now get a list of all the people that clicked on links that shouldn't have been clicking on links.
Hey, so if any of my...
now in your company...
I was going to say, I hate to reveal this big secret, Bradley, tonight to everybody, but at my day job, I run a software company. And this channel is not about that software company, but I do have a day job in case anyone's thinking this is how I make a living. It's not. So in my day job, I work running a software company that makes software for contractors. And we have a subscription to Office 365, you know, Microsoft Office, and it's called Microsoft 365 now, actually, but we have a subscription to that. Mm-hmm. One of the features that's available, depending on your subscription level, is the system will send out fake viruses. So you can send out these emails, and they'll test your employees, and you can go to your control panel and see who opened them. Yep. And who clicked yes and who downloaded the file, and it's pretty neat. It allows you to test your people by sending them these real viruses. It's a real virus, but it's harmless because it comes from your own Microsoft account. Have you seen that?
Yep. No, that's the best thing. That's the best thing you could possibly do. If you're only going to do one thing, it's user training, because that is your weakest point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing I'd recommend people do is get really good virus software that can't be turned off by your coworkers, your employees. So in other words, you have virus software running all the time, but you can't turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they turn it off, of course, then you're not protected, and you never know when they'll turn it off. And so nobody sponsors us, and I don't want to plug any software programs out there, but there are programs that you can buy and install on your company network that people can't turn the software off. I mean, it's super difficult. They can't turn it off. It auto updates itself. It automatically runs. It scans. And you can go into your control panel and set all of those parameters, all of those preferences. And I think that was one of the best things that we ever did. We run that program ever since about 4 years ago. We had that problem. We've had software like that, and it has saved us many times. It stopped many viruses. So I would recommend people do that. The other thing that I mentioned earlier, I want to add to this list, Bradley, is don't open stuff that you don't recognize. I mean, if you don't recognize the email, don't open it. And if you don't recognize where these links go, don't open them. So again, hover over the link with your mouse. You take your mouse pointer, hover over the link, and you'll see the URL pop up. If it says Microsoft, look at it very carefully, or Amazon or whatever. Look at it very carefully, because what matters is what's before the .com or .info or .biz, right? So it could be Microsoft blah, 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 .info, and that's not Microsoft, right?
Yep.
That's a subdomain.
Absolutely.
And that isn't them. So hover over that link before you click on it. I think Ian had a question. I've experienced a bad actor posing with an email similar to mine to our payroll that they wanted to change my direct deposit. Luckily, our payroll person called me to confirm. Oh, yeah, that's another one. I've seen that too, where, this is the payroll department, or this is HR, or whatever. But yeah, thanks for that, Ian. Thankfully, Ian didn't fall victim to that.
I've got a good one, and it's actually happened since I started working here. I got one that said, "We know what you've been looking at," and it accused me of looking at porn at work, which I don't. So I immediately knew it was BS.
Yeah.
But they basically said that, if I didn't pay them, they were going to, turn me in.
Yeah, they had pictures of you doing it.
That's one to watch out for.
Yeah, I've got those too. They said, we took over your webcam. Yep. We've got pictures of you looking at porn, and we're going to release this to the public unless you pay up. And there was a link to click.
Yeah.
So don't click
Good
that
Lord,
link.
Talk about dirty secrets, you guys.
Yeah.
Man, we're...
Yeah, I didn't do anything.
Hey, at least we're warning them, hey, you know what? Every guy has probably got that.
Most vulnerable.
I'll tell you what would work on me is an email that says, we know you spend too much time on Amazon at work, and we're going to tell people. Then that's believable. So I'd be like, yeah, I'm guilty of that. Or eBay looking at tools. We know you spend hours on eBay looking at tools and watches. That would be believable. So don't click links that you don't recognize. Hover over the links to be sure. Pay attention to emails that seem like they're kind of phony. Get virus software, but try to get, if you're a business, use virus software that cannot be turned off by your employees, because what good is it if they don't update it and they can just turn it off whenever they want to? Backups, off-site backups are very important. You can have an on-site backup if you want. You can have a big hard drive attached to your server if you want to. But what you really ought to have, in addition to that, don't skip this one, and that is an off-site backup. That's a backup on the cloud with versioning. So the system that we have it has versions. So the Word document can have the same name, but we'll have version 1, version 2, version 3. And that way, if they send us a corrupted version of the backup, we still can take yesterday's backup, the day before that, go to version 5, and at least we've got an older version of the file. But we pay for a lot of storage so that we can just have lots of redundancy. And I feel pretty confident that we would be okay with that system. I don't know how you feel about it. If you don't like this, feel free to tell me. But we have gone to OneDrive. We use Microsoft 365, and we've gone to OneDrive completely. All of our files are out on OneDrive, in addition to being backed up, by the way, elsewhere. But they're on OneDrive, and OneDrive promises pretty good security. How do you feel about those people out there using OneDrive for their file storage?
They're probably safer than if they were running their own server infrastructure
That's what I'm
and
thinking,
their own
because
backups.
I think Microsoft on their worst day would know more about security than I would on my best day. But I'm just thinking that Microsoft probably has taken good steps to protect the OneDrive. If you're not familiar with it, for the rest of you out there, OneDrive is just like, what are some of their competitors? What's a competitor, Bradley, to OneDrive?
To OneDrive, Dropbox.
Dropbox, that's it.
You've got
Google
oh,
Drive.
geez, what are the other ones?
Dropbox was the one I'm thinking about, because I think they're like the oldest, but it's like Dropbox. It's just a hard drive out on the internet, and they back it up constantly. So they're versioning your files. They're backing things up. I think that system would be a very good step to improving your company's security. What else could people do? What have I missed?
Geo split. So it'll be in their eastern headquarters where they have their data server or data center there, and then they also have one in the central data center, and they have one on the west coast. So they'll generally have 3 versions of your same data, and it'll be geolocated separately.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. That's important to know. So let me reiterate that. Your OneDrive, most likely that Word file, that Excel spreadsheet that you care a lot about, a copy of it could be in multiple places around the country. So if one place does get hit or gets burned down or whatever, they've got copies of your files in other locations. So that's pretty secure.
That's similar to how cryptocurrency works, right? Multiple systems that are validating, right?
Sorry, what was that?
I said that's similar to how crypto works, right? Like it's got multiple systems that validate, I guess, money's online, digital currency.
Are we talking about cryptocurrency?
Well, I was just saying, like when he said that there's multiple.
One of my favorite things here.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking when he said the multiple computers that verify it. So yeah.
But yeah, it's the decentralization is really what you were referring to right there, and it's it would be, I guess you could look at the OneDrive situation or OneDrive geolocation as a decentralized, as it is not centered in one physical location. Now, you'd still look at it as something that is centralized because only one company runs it. One company owns it. If you're talking about cryptocurrency and true decentralization, you're talking about worldwide, not one person owns any of it, really. And I mean, let's say I'm running my own node. I own my node, but as far as the data that's on it, I can't manipulate it. I can't play with it, because there are hundreds of thousands of other nodes out there that would overwrite my own. The only way for you to actually modify or manipulate any of that data would be to have a 51% share of the nodes out there. You'd have to be running at least 51% of the nodes that are running for that particular blockchain. And it becomes what's the word I'm looking for? A war of attrition, because the more nodes that you put inside of a decentralized node cluster, the less it's diminishing returns. Because in order to actually hit the 51%, let's say you start out with 1,000 nodes, right? That's all that was in the entire infrastructure across the world. Well, you would think, okay, I just need to have 501, right? No, you don't. You actually would need to end up to have about 75 to 80%. So you need to have about 750 to 800 of them, of the nodes, before you'd actually truly have 51% and be able to write your own changes and then have it replicated to the rest of the other people out there.
I wanted to circle back to the USBs. How can companies prevent somebody from just plugging in a USB they found in the parking lot and putting a virus on their system?
Group policies.
So what is that?
That is the best solution. And what you would end up doing as a system administrator is you would disable auto run applications from either CDs or USBs. So you'd have only select PCs or whatever that can actually run USBs.
So group policies.
It kind of cripples you. It kind of cripples you as a company because, I mean, think how many times you plug a flash drive in your accounting PC to be able to give your accountant a version of your QuickBooks to be able to do your taxes.
Mm-hmm. Right. But what you could do is you could give permission only to those that would need to do such a thing. That way you have somebody who deals with clients that come in. Like I'm in the accounting business. We have clients come in and they pick up their taxes on a USB drive, but we would only give permission to the people that would actually copy those files to a USB drive. The other people wouldn't have that permission, right? You could do that through the group policy.
Yep.
So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bradley, but what we're talking about with group policies is that when all your computers in a business are connected to a server, that server can have group policies on it that basically control the way all the computers operate. So you could have a group policy that says that USB drives are not going to function, or that they are read-only, or that you cannot install software from them. And it just goes on and on. There's thousands of things, but whenever your company computers connect to the server, they're part of a domain, and that domain has a domain controller which can contain the group policies, and you have control over what everybody can do to their computer. Is that pretty much how it works?
Yeah. It's simply a way of touching one specific spot in your guys' network, and then having, instead of me going and sitting in front of every single computer in your guys' network, I can change one setting in one place and have it replicated out across all, 100 of your PCs in your entire company. It's a time saver.
I recently sent out an email to all of our employees reminding them that they should not be storing important files on their computer on their local storage, that all those files should be stored on our cloud storage. But one thing I could do, Bradley, is I could create a policy that just forbids that, right? I could make it so that even if you tried to save that Excel spreadsheet to your local drive, you couldn't. It would just automatically find itself out on our cloud storage, right?
Sure.
So
are you talking about like a back-end folder redirection?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. You could make it look like it's actually on their desktop, or it's inside their My Documents, but in the back, behind the scenes, it's actually routed around to their OneDrive.
Right. Now, for
Absolutely.
most contractors that I deal with, they're very intelligent and they could probably figure that stuff out. But I know you guys and gals out there, you're too busy to do this. You'll never get to it. I'm speaking for me. I would love to do this kind of stuff. I'm very interested in it, as you might be able to tell. But who's got time to figure it out? People like Bradley, they do it all the time. They can do it very quickly. I do think it's worth it when you need advice on a new comfort system, or you have a serious plumbing problem. You call a plumber, you call an HVAC technician. If you're worried about internet security, computer security, people stealing your files or doing something they shouldn't do, you call an expert like Bradley and have them figure it out. That's what experts do. Bradley, before I forget, how do people get in touch with you?
Oh, geez. Well, you can typically find me on LinkedIn. It's my full name. It's Bradley A. Roth. And you can send me a message through there, or you can actually email me. My email address is bradleyaroth@gmail.com. And for the most part, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of my stuff is all word of mouth anymore. I couldn't tell you the last time I actually had to pick up the phone and call somebody to try and get a job.
One thing Bradley's done for us is, and this is just the nice thing about the internet and where we're at with things, he's helped us with a lot of clients that he's never met, never been there, never been inside their building. They're in another state, and he just remotes in and fixes things and takes care of stuff and never even been in the building. It used to be where, you hired somebody locally because they needed to walk through the door and get their hands on your computers, but that's not necessary much anymore, is it?
No, it is not. And actually, I've worked with people from different countries now too. It's even getting broader. But right here, right where I'm sitting, this is where I make my money. I don't have to go anywhere. I'm 100% remote. I can either work from here or I can grab my laptop. And as long as I got a laptop and an active internet connection, I can work anywhere. Yeah. I've got a soft phone on my desktop. I got a soft phone on my laptop. I don't even have to have a cell phone. I'm good. I can call out. I can make and receive calls. I can remote into anything. I can do anything I need to. I can refer to any of the experts that I have on my side. If I run into something that I need to, I'm out of my depth, because I mean there is things that I'm better at certain things, and I'm obviously weaker at different things because I've chosen to focus on different aspects. You can't, if you ever meet somebody that tells you that they know everything that there is about IT, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
It's too big of a topic.
Yeah.
It's too big of a topic.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like saying, I know everything there is to know about law or medicine. You practice IT and you have a certain field of expertise, right?
Yeah.
Ian commented that the company he used to work for, they restricted all the USBs. All those ports were restricted, and you had to ask for temporary access from the IT department. I think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So getting back to prevention.
I can tell you about a certain data center that I was in.
Oh, yeah, let's hear it.
And I had a armed escort. They're a Fortune 50 company, I'll tell you that much. And they're in something called the bunker. They share it with DOD and Homeland Security, and they have it would withstand a nuclear blast. It's really impressive. But you get an armed escort the whole time. His whole job is just to sit there and watch. Well, not sit. He stands right beside you and watches you while you're working on the server farm.
Huh. That's cool. You'd make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, try and bring a USB into there.
You make a lot of mistakes with a guy holding an assault rifle there standing over you.
Yeah.
we talked about cyber insurance or insurance for ransomware, and that's a thing. I'm sure many people have heard about it. Maybe you've thought about getting it. The one thing that I've heard about getting insurance against ransomware is you still got to make an appointment with somebody like a Bradley, because they only insure you when you can prove that you've taken all kinds of steps to avoid it. So the idea of applying for that insurance actually helps you become protected against the thing that the insurance is there to pay against. Is that right?
Absolutely. And we end up doing quarterly evaluations. We call risk assessments. We do a whole penetration scan and try to we try to actually break into the network of the people that paid us, and we'll go through and we'll scan their network. We'll figure out where the security holes are at, and then we'll do something called a security remediation. We'll find, let's say, TLS 1.1 or TLS 1.0 is still running on some switch somewhere in their network, or they have an SNMP that's public still. And those are all, very, very old exploits. Those are things that should be changed. So as far as continuing your insurance, you typically want to have that quarterly test done.
I also want to recommend, and if I have this wrong, Bradley, just say so. I tell people all the time, run your updates. A lot of us are reluctant to update, and I don't mean like updating to Windows 11, but run all your updates. Set your updates to run, optional updates to run. Keep your systems updated, and here's why, and this was the important lesson I learned years ago. The bad actors, the bad people out there, what they do is when a patch comes out, they figure out what it patched. So let's pretend like, if I can use a metaphor, let's pretend like it was discovered that there is a door number 12, that's unlocked to your building, and bad people can get into your building and steal stuff through door 12. So a patch comes out to lock that door. Well, they basically reverse engineer the update and find out that it fixes door number 12. So now they put out viruses to walk through door number 12. So in other words, when these patches come out, they figure out what they fixed and they exploit that in computers that haven't ran the updates yet. So whenever updates come out, you need to be Johnny on the spot and run those updates, because they not only fix problems that people are apparently aware of, but they tell everybody that wants to know what problems are out there that they can take advantage of. And you actually have people hurrying. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a big flashing neon sign. There was a problem right here.
Yeah. Yeah. So
you got it.
That's important to remember. The update comes out, bad people look at the update and say, oh my gosh, this fixes door number 12, which is unlocked. I didn't know that was unlocked. And they're rushing to go through that door. So when an update comes out, you've got to update as fast as you can. All those patches and updates, run them as soon as they're available. I understand the reluctance, but the point I want to make is they are advertising to every bad person out there what exploits are available, what problems are available for them to take advantage of.
Yeah. And all they got to do is write a piece of code that will do a network scan or do some sort of scan to test for whether or not they have that KB installed or that software update installed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it doesn't, then it goes into a list of possible places that they can try to exploit.
That's right. Yeah. Colin, there's a comment on there I can't read. It's cut off at the bottom. Comment or question?
Yeah, Ian's asking, how often do you suggest a company receive a penetration test?
Well, how big of a target are you? How do you do several $100,000 a year in sales? Do you do several $100 million in sales? It really kind of depends. I mean, if you're a bigger target, I would suggest getting it done more often.
Yeah.
But if you're a smaller 2 to 5 people size company, once every 6 months might be a good spot for you to be at. I don't know. It's kind of a subjective answer.
Yeah, maybe you do it once a quarter, but just a reminder, if you didn't hear me earlier, and I'm not here to promote any software, but I am here to share personal experience. My companies, we use Microsoft 365, which is formerly Office 365, and depending on your subscription level, I forgot what level we're at, but we have one of the higher levels, but it's still not very expensive, but it offers a lot of security tools. And one of the tools is you can go in and send out, click a few buttons to set it up, but you can go out, set it up so that it'll send out fake emails with fake viruses. So in other words, the email will look like it's from a supplier or a bank or a past due notice. It'll have a link. You follow the link. You'll have an opportunity to download software. it might say, hey, install me. And if you install it, Microsoft tracks that whole thing, and you can go into your panel and see, John fell for the whole thing. I mean, he went there, downloaded it, installed it, gave it permission, gift wrapped it, the whole works. So it's really nice. And then you can have, a meeting, and it's all about training, isn't it? Then you can have a meeting with your coworkers and say, look, we can't do the following. Watch out for the following. John here kind of fell victim to it. Thankfully, it was a fake virus. The system sent it out. And I think through training, you'll prevent somebody from getting that ransomware. What a lot of people don't realize, I think, is that this stuff needs your cooperation. Most of it is you go to a fake website and put in your real credentials, and they have them. Or you go to a website and it says, download this program. Like you're having printer troubles, download our utility and it'll fix your printer troubles. And what you've downloaded is ransomware. So a lot of it is just don't do things that don't feel right. I think you were talking about that earlier, Bradley.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point.
They need people. They need our cooperation.
100%.
Did you hear about, changing the subject a little bit, did you hear about Apple's iOS 14.5 update, including a feature where every time a software program tracks you, regardless of your preferences, as I understand it, it will ask you, do you want to be tracked by this application? So in other words, you open up Facebook and it'll say, do you want Facebook to track your locations? Have you heard about that?
I did not,
Yeah.
and I'm considering to go be an Apple fan now. I'm rocking the Google Pixel, and I know I'm being tracked on that thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. So two things.
I think that's really. I don't know. I think that's a great thing that Apple's doing.
Do you? I have no problem with it.
Transparency.
I'm not an
Absolutely.
Apple guy. We're a Microsoft shop, but so I'm not an Apple guy. But Apple's fine. But the interesting thing is, yesterday, Google stock lost 25% of its, or pardon me, Facebook rather. Facebook stock lost 25% of its value because two things happened in one day. They reported some disappointing economic news, which in itself wasn't that bad. But at the same time, it was announced that feature from Apple.
User loss.
And
oh yeah.
Facebook admitted this is going to likely hurt advertising revenue because a lot of data that they give their advertisers comes from tracking you.
And a lot of times, as you're pointing out, unaware.
And in all fairness, they tell you when you install it, or maybe when you first run it, any app, hey, this app might track you. But you typically will say yes when the app's running, only when the app's running, ask me every time, or track me all the time, and you forget it. But the difference here is it's going to ask, as I understand it, as what's reported on Bloomberg yesterday, it will ask you every single time you use the program, and that has Facebook worried.
Oh, absolutely, and it should.
So I think we're going to see more.
I mean,
of that.
the biggest lie that we the people have ever done is, yes, I have read and agreed to all terms and conditions.
I know.
There is nobody that reads those things.
No.
I mean, you maybe get a lawyer that reads it every now and then. I think the best example was a company actually snuck a couple lines in there about selling your soul to the company.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until somebody actually called them out on it half of a year later that they finally came out and did a whole public, public awareness. Nobody reads this thing. We got one person that read this in 6 months.
Yeah.
We've got over 100,000 souls that we supposedly own.
Yeah.
Like, we'll give them back now.
So my son Jordan is real nerdy, real smart kid, loves reading stuff like that. And he's shown me two different things, terms and conditions, that really cracked me up. One was that you agree to give your second child, if you have one, to the corporation. They slipped it in there just to see. And another one, he goes to the website and he says, check this out. Now, watch what happens when I hit agree. So he goes to the site, hits agree, and it says, you read 8,534 words a minute. That's very impressive. So however long the delay was, it does the math real quick because it was different every time.
Yeah.
And it would tell you how fast a reader you apparently are and how impressed they are by that. I thought those programmers have a good sense of humor.
Guilting you by shame.
Yeah, I thought that'd be fun to do.
Yeah.
I like the you read 8,000 words a minute one. I think that's fun.
Oh yeah. No, it's clever. It's a nice way of drawing attention to the problem without being rude, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it really comes down to trying to come across as a caring individual or a caring company or somebody that does that actually isn't just about the money. We're trying to do something for you.
That's right.
I think it's a good thing.
You know, the
Transparency is a good thing.
I agree. One of the things I try to live by, total transparency. You know, one of the problems I have with these terms and conditions and all these contracts that you hit agree to is they know they have you over the barrel because it's on, a lot of times it's on your phone. You know, most of us are consuming the internet now on a mobile device. You can barely read it if you wanted to. It takes a long time to read it. And as far as I know, there's nothing preventing them from just throwing everything they can think of in there just in case it helps them. So, I mean, in other words, it's not like they're going to get sued because they've put too much in their terms and conditions. So they just throw everything they can think of in those operating agreements, knowing that people are going to agree to it.
There's the difference between having it in the terms and conditions and actually being legally enforceable, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are times where, specifically like Microsoft was taken to court and somebody bought a brand new laptop. They didn't want to agree to the terms and conditions in order to have Microsoft installed. And they didn't agree to, they didn't want it. They wanted to buy the PC without any operating system on it. So they took it and they took it to the court system. And they were able to get a refund for the operating system that they did not want, that they disagreed to. Because the whole concept is I didn't agree to it, so I shouldn't have to pay for it.
That's interesting.
They got a refund. Then I think they installed Linux or some sort of FOSS software.
Mm-hmm. With speaking of installing, with the group policies we talked about earlier, that's another thing you can do on your computer network if you have a so-called domain and you want to talk to the experts about it. But you can prevent people from installing software on their computers. You can lock down their computers so they can't install anything without your permission. They can only install certain programs. They can only open certain software programs. And I think, Bradley, you've set things up like that for mobile devices that are company-owned as well. Why don't you tell us about that? What can contractors do to protect their tablet or the software that they might use every day on their phone?
Goodness. Well, all right. You put it out there first. You were talking about Microsoft Office and licensing. So anything with a M3 or above license. I'm going to guess when you were talking about your tools that Microsoft was throwing in to do the testing of your users to throw out stuff, you need at least an M5 license, I believe. But anyway, okay, so with your M licensing, it used to originally be E. So it'd be like when it was Office, before it became Microsoft, it was Office 365. So you'd have like an E1 that would just give you Exchange, that would give you an inbox, an email, and then E3 would be give you the ability to download the Microsoft suite. So, for example, if you are over on the M version, you're on the Microsoft 3 or above, M3, it gives you a tool called Intune. And that allows you to set group policies. And I'm saying that in quotes because it's not technically called group policies. It's an application called Intune that allows you to control your mobile devices that are tied to your guys' infrastructure. So if you give one of your employees an email address and you give one of your employees a digital device, whether it's a tablet or a phone, and you have an M3 or above license, you have the ability to go in and actually restrict what they do with that device.
And that's one of the advantages for you contractors. That's one of the advantages to owning the mobile device. A lot of companies will ask, hey, should I own the mobile device and let them use it, or should they just use their own mobile device, their own phone? One of the advantages, and I can't decide that for my clients, but one of the advantages is if you own it, then you can control it. And you could use Intune to secure that device so that they can't install whatever they want on it. They can't turn off the GPS tracking and so forth. You know, you have full control over it, and why not? It's company-owned property. When they're off the clock, they can turn that device completely off, and that's that. But that is one advantage to your company owning the mobile device.
Yeah, 100%.
After all, I mean,
you can get all sorts of data off of that. You know, you can get somebody that's speeding down the interstate. You can get somebody that's braking too hard, turning too hard. You can get all sorts of information off of it. You can get obviously how much screen time they were on the job site for an hour, how much that time was actually on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're not going to feel bad about. You're not going to feel bad about collecting that information when it's your mobile device and it's used while you're paying them.
Absolutely.
But if it's on their own phone, potentially tonight when they're off the clock, then, that's not right. So that's an advantage of owning the device, I think.
I agree.
Now, you said something about Exchange. I thought I'd throw that out there. We talk a little bit about Exchange.
Sure.
Even though it's not related to cybersecurity, I guess it could be in a way. Many companies have Outlook or Gmail or whatever, but let's just talk about Outlook. Many companies have Outlook installed on everybody's computer. Everybody's got their own email, but all that email that they receive and send is usually on their local hard drive. It's on that particular computer. So everybody's got their own email on their own computer. Microsoft Exchange is like a central database that holds all the email. That way, all the email is in one place, easy to back it up because it's in one spot. And what's even better is, Bradley, if you work with me and I'm the boss and I want to see your email for some reason, I can go see it. I don't have to go over to your computer. On my computer, I can see the email that you've been sending, that you've been receiving, and so forth. So Exchange is a real advantage, I think, for businesses, wouldn't you say?
I completely agree. As a consultant to different business owners or whatever, and they want to be able to check up on different individuals for different reasons. I personally, I don't like playing Big Brother. But I understand that there's a need for it sometimes. And you completely, as an owner, you're the one providing the software, you're the one providing the hardware, you're the one paying the hourly wage that they have right there. You have every right as an owner to be able to look at stuff if it's underneath your roof. And Exchange does give you a very easy way to go in and look at any of your employees' emails. You can actually it's an impersonation. You just go up on the top right-hand corner of your Outlook web, and you click on your name, and then it says open mailbox. And you can type anybody's name in there. As long as you have permission to be able to look at their inbox, that's a real easy way to go peek at whatever they were doing.
I'll give every. Sorry, I was going to say I'll give everybody.
Look at their sent items.
Yeah, and I'll give everybody an example of how I've used it. At no time have I ever cared to look at what email people are getting or sending just because I'm bored. But we've had people that were sick longer than we expected, and we needed to get to their email. And it was more convenient to do that from another computer than to go sit at their desk and go through their email. That was handy. We've had people say, I sent your company that email, and nobody replied. Imagine how nice it would be to search every email your company has ever received and say, no, I never got that email. This company never received it. It never went into a spam folder. It was never deleted. It was never received. Never. Or you could do a search to see if we ever sent an email to someone. Have we ever even sent an email out to somebody? You could use it also to keep track of marketing and sales efforts. How many sales-related emails have gone out? Marketing-related emails have gone out. So there's all kinds of real business reasons to own Exchange. My advice is if you don't have Exchange and you're a business growing, you're at 10 employees, 12 employees, and you expect to have 15 or 20, it's time to get Exchange. When we were a small company and moved to Exchange, it was one of the best things we ever did. And it wasn't about Big Brother. It was just about access to data.
Yeah, I agree. The logistics of it is amazing. The ability to look at any of what are called the message tracing, where you can actually go through, you can type in an email address, you can say anything that was ever sent or received from our entire domain. Yeah. And you can look at every single email that it was either ever sent to this email address or anything was ever received. And it's really astounding.
And for a lot of us, these emails are super important. I mean, if our phones went out, that would not be as bad as our email going out. If I had to lose one or the other, my customers would rather our phone stop working than our email, and I think my coworkers would too. It's really nice to have central control, central backups, just way better. Microsoft Exchange is so much better. Or any comparable product. I keep talking about Microsoft just because that's what I know. So Bradley, what final tips can you give our viewers on cybersecurity, avoiding ransomware, things like that?
Oh, goodness. It's really just retouching on what you and I talked about. There's multiple instances of companies out there that do user training or user testing. You mentioned Microsoft. I'll throw another name out there. There's a company called KnowBe4. We use it for a lot of our clients. And what you'll do is you'll set up quarterly instances where it'll email out everybody. You got multiple companies that are out there that are able to do this testing for you. If you can, if you're worried about security, either get a security consultant out there, pay to get somebody out there to let you know how vulnerable you are first. And then secondly, listen to them and try to put in some of the recommendations that they put through. You're not going to be able to afford everything, I'm sure, to try and make your place a complete, made out of bricks, to borrow the adage from like the Three Little Pigs. But I mean, at least if you can get it to sticks, and you can start doing some training and user training, or you can get a better firewall, or renew your certifications, or make sure your security updates are turned on. Things of that nature.
In case somebody's interested,
little things that can make a big deal.
Spell that KnowBe4 for us, please.
Know before? It is KNOW, the number 4, or excuse me, B, letter B, and then the number 4.
Okay. I thought it was
No
Nova
B4.
4, so I thought we'd throw that out there in case someone's interested. No B4, KNO Bravo
Yep.
4.
Yeah, we use it for a lot of different clients.
I wanted to throw this out, Bryant.
It's got a nice central dashboard that you're able to look through. Different MSPs, or the MSP is a managed service provider, so they typically have hundreds, if not thousands, of clients out there, and it allows them to see a list of all the different clients that they have and how well they scored, or how well they were able to successfully navigate your guys' training.
I see. So, Bryant, I wanted to throw this out. Bryant commented earlier that they were called app protection policies instead of the group policies. So, app protection policies. I really think that's a great idea, because more and more companies are using mobile devices. I work with contractors that have 150, 200 technicians in the field, each with a mobile device. And in many cases, those are connected to the corporate computers in one way or another. So it's pretty important to protect them. You could easily grab a file, put it on your mobile device, have it stored on your company's storage, and it could be a virus. So I think it's really important to protect those mobile devices. I think that's a big vulnerable part of what we're talking about. If somebody said to me, hey, I'm broke, I don't have hardly any money to spend, give me some advice, I'd say, first of all, make some money. No, but secondly, I'd say, okay, look, this is cheap. Have a meeting. Just get your company together in a room, eat some donuts, drink some coffee, and explain to everybody the vast majority of ransomware happens because people clicked a link they shouldn't have clicked, or they installed a piece of software they should not have installed. It's that simple. They downloaded some utility that was supposed to fix something, and they installed virus software, ransomware, or they followed a link and went to a site and said yes to some warning, and they got infected that way. That is the vast majority of how companies get infected with ransomware. Just have a meeting and explain that.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, with that said,
like you said, it doesn't cost you a whole lot of money.
No, just a meeting, and you'll have to have a few reminders, right? You'll have to do that 2-3 times a year, but just start with a meeting explaining that, and I think that'll help I think that'll help a lot with protection. So I think that, with that said, Bradley,
being conscious.
With that said, I'll give you the final word on cybersecurity.
Well, James, I appreciate you bringing me on. This was actually my first podcast that I've ever done, so I appreciate the honor of being on.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Hopefully you'll be on a better podcast someday than this one.
Yeah, because we do this in his mom's basement.
Well,
If only everybody knew.
Next time.
This is not a fancy New York office. I'm actually in my mom and dad's basement, and I am moving out of this house eventually. I'd still live
James,
there.
It was a pleasure.
I'd still live there if they were alive and I knew what a cruel world it was. I would have never moved out. Thank you very much, Bradley.
Yeah.
I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate all of the people that come and watch it live, and especially all the people that watch it later. Thank you so much. I hope it's of value. I hope to see everybody next Thursday, 7 p.m. Central Time. We'll do it all over again. Once again, I'm James Leichter for Field Service Live. Good night.